Is there a single TV show that, for the entirety of its run, managed to keep its story going without any retcons? For one reason or another, it is common to see a popular series amend or completely disregard a pre-established story or character detail, often leading fans to wonder if they are losing their minds. Don't worry. You're not crazy but merely a victim of some confusing or even just annoying TV retcons like the following. The romance between Corey Matthews, Ben Savage, and Topanga Lawrence, Danielle Fishel, could have been the perfect sitcom love story if the classic comedy could keep the details of their relationship straight. When Fishel first joined the Boy Meets World cast, she was initially introduced as the weird student in Corey's elementary school class, but when she is later reinvented as his love interest, the show tries to play them off as sweethearts since childhood. Not only is season 9 of Roseanne, in which the Connors' lives change when they win the lottery, revealed to be a fantasy in the series finale, but we also learn that Dan, John Goodman, was dead the entire time, having suffered a heart attack. This controversial plot twist was ignored in 2018 when the sitcom was revived for a 10th season before it was rebranded as The Connors. On one episode of Cheers, Frasier Crane, Kelsey Grammer, tells his friends at the bar that his late father was a research scientist. However, in Frasier's self-titled and equally beloved TV show spin-off, we see Martin Crane, John Mahoney, is alive and well and a retired cop. In an episode where Ted Danson appears as Sam Malone, the show tries to explain that Frasier's dad was dead to him at the time after a bitter argument. In the third season of Prison Break, Michael, Wentworth Miller, learns that Sarah Wayne Callies, was kidnapped and beheaded, only to see her come back in season 4, which reveals it was never actually her head. In reality, the reason for the character's demise was due to a dispute involving Callie's contract, but when she was able to work out a deal to return to the series, her earlier death was rewritten as a head fake. In its 6th season, the acclaimed DC TV show Smallville introduced the iconic character of photographer Jimmy Olsen, Aaron Ashmore, only to kill him off 3 years later. It is at his funeral that we learn that his real name is Henry James Olsen and that the real Jimmy Olsen was his never-before-seen little brother the whole time. In the pilot episode of Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld, calls his next-door neighbor by the name Kessler, but, from the next episode on, Michael Richards' character is referred to as Kramer, after Larry David's real-life friend on whom the role is based. The series tries to explain this in season 9's The Betrayal, with a flashback to the character's first meeting when Kramer tells Jerry that the name on his buzzer is incorrect. When Patrick Duffy decided to quit the CBS primetime soap opera, Dallas, his character, Bobby Ewing, was written off the show in season 8 when he was run over by his sister-in-law, Catherine Wentworth, Morgan Brittany, and was buried after succumbing to his injuries in the season 9 premiere. However, after the writers urged the actor to come back to the cast, the season 10 opener revealed everything that happened in the previous season was imagined by his wife, Pamela Barnes Ewing, Victoria Principal, in her sleep. As revealed in the series finale of Gossip Girl, Dan Humphrey, Penn Badgley, was the mysterious blogger the entire time, but, if that's true, why does he act surprised by several posts about him, his friends, and his relatives in earlier episodes? Furthermore, Gossip Girl publicizes the fact that Dan and his girlfriend, Serena Van Der Woodsen, Blake Lively, share a half-sibling, which he adamantly wants kept secret. So, why on earth would he make that public, even anonymously? YouTuber V Infuso debunked an urban legend believing that the youngest Winslow child, Judy, once walked up the stairs in a season 4 episode never to be seen again. While Jamie Foxworth's actual final appearance in the Family Matter cast came later that season in Mama's Wedding, her subsequent absence, due to the writers having nothing interesting to come up with for her, was never explained nor acknowledged for the remainder of the series. In one of the most ridiculous Friends episodes, the one where everyone finds out, Chandler, Matthew Perry, is coerced by Phoebe's, Lisa Kudrow, feigns seduction into admitting that he is in love with Monica, Courtney Cox, to everyone's surprise, including her own. However, the otherwise touching moment seems to forget about an earlier Friends Thanksgiving episode, the one with all the Thanksgivings, in which Chandler lets his feelings for Monica slip when she surprises him with a turkey on her head. Early on in the long-running, classic sci-fi TV show's history, it is established that the title character of Doctor Who, like all Time Lords, can only regenerate a total of 13 times. However, that rule has since been negated as the 13th Doctor actor, Jodie Whittaker, was later replaced by Ncuti Gatwa. After adopting his vigilante alter ego at the beginning of the hit series Arrow, Oliver Queen, Stephen Amell, is said to have become the first superhero. Yet, later down the road as the Arrowverse franchise would continue to evolve with its multiple spin-offs, it was discovered that superhero teams have existed as early as World War II. When Kimmy Gibbler is first mentioned in the 1987 pilot for Full House, DJ Tanner, Candace Cameron Bure, says she has 3 sisters, but the character, played by Andrea Barber, says in season 3 that her parents stopped having kids after her. This could imply she is merely the youngest in her family, but she was also known to mention having an unseen older brother named Garth. Furthermore, in Netflix's revival, Fuller House, we are introduced to her younger brother, Jimmy, Adam Hagenbeck. When Jared Padalecki first joined the Gilmore Girls cast as Dean, the character was introduced as a Chicago native who had moved to Stars Hollow fairly recently and loves obscure books and movies. However, when New York transplant and obscure book and movie lover Jess, Milo Ventimiglia, is brought into the mix, Dean is suddenly reinvented as a more rural individual who has lost his cultural interests and thinks of Stars Hollow as his true home after living most of his life there. We are willing to bet that, even if you considered yourself a huge That 70s Show fan, you had absolutely no recollection that Donna, Laura Prepon, had a sister. Tina Pinchotti, Amanda Fuller, makes one appearance in season 1 and is subsequently mentioned only once more in a throwaway joke from season 2's Vanstock, but, from that point on, Donna is referred to as an only child. Here is an example of something that is not so much a retcon but a deeply confusing and quite maddening TV character evolution that suddenly comes out of nowhere. One of the most heavily criticized aspects of the 8th and final season of Game of Thrones sees the normally level-headed and fair Daenerys, Emilia Clarke, become a cold-hearted tyrant who commits unimaginably brutal crimes without a second's hesitation. There are a number of notable inconsistencies regarding the characters in the Riverdale cast, but one of the more glaring involves Cheryl Blossom, Madeline Petch, and her brother, Jason, Trevor Steins. While initially established as fraternal twins, later episodes of the Archie comics-inspired dramedy imply that they are in 2 different grade levels at school. A lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans like to count the sudden appearance of Buffy's never-before-seen younger sister Dawn, Michelle Trachtenberg, as a retcon. However, the sentient form of Power's inclusion is explained by fake memories implanted into the characters' minds after she is sent to Buffy, Sarah Michelle Gellar, to protect, so we are not counting that. Instead, we will mention how Spike, James Marsters, refers to Angel, David Boreanaz, as the vampire who turned him until it is later revealed that Drusilla is his true sire. One of the most iconic running gags on The Big Bang Theory is Sheldon Cooper's, Jim Parsons, compulsion to knock on people's doors 3 times, which was only first introduced in season 2. However, in season 10, he explains that he formed the habit after accidentally walking in on his father having an affair and wants to give people enough time to get their pants on, with his courteous and incessant signal. In the first season of Heroes, it is established that Claire Bennett, Hayden Panettiere, developed her rapid healing ability later in life when she hit puberty. However, in a later episode when she meets her birth mother, it is revealed that she was indestructible even when she was an infant. At one point in the 15-season run of Supernatural, it is established that being a vessel for a spiritual entity will result in the host's death once the entity no longer requires their physical form. However, Sam, Jared Padalecki, Dean, Jensen Ackles, and even the Lucifer-possessed President Jefferson Rooney, David Chisholm, end up just fine after their time as a vessel ends. When Tina, Jenna Ushkowitz, is first introduced in the first season of Glee, she speaks with a stutter that suddenly disappears after she joins the Glee Club. She eventually reveals she faked it hoping that it would make R.T. Abrams, Kevin McHale, like her more. Even a detective show as clever as Monk has been known to make a few logical errors from time to time. For instance, Lieutenant Randy Disher, Jason Gray Stanford, says at one point that he has 2 aunts but no uncles, but, in the season 5 episode Mr. Monk Visits a Farm, he inherits land from a recently deceased family member. His uncle, Harvey, Jack Keller. In season 2 of creator Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing, it is mentioned by political commentator Mark Gottfried, Ted McGinley, that President Josiah Bartlett, Martin Sheen, vetoed a Republican-backed education package. However, in the following season when he vetoes a repeal of the death tax, it causes an uproar as people claim he had never used the veto before. In Season 2 of How I Met Your Mother, we discover that Barney Stinson, Neil Patrick Harris, not only does not know how to drive a car but is absolutely terrified to get behind the wheel. Yet, 2 seasons later, in one of the best HIMYM episodes, As Fast as She Can, he makes multiple attempts to get a speeding ticket to prove he can talk his way out of one and is also seen driving plenty of times afterward. Perhaps he could have worked up the courage to finally learn how to drive by then, but there is absolutely no mention of it, making his sudden acquirement of this skill a bit sudden. At the end of Sherlock's 3rd season, a message from the detective's arch-nemesis, Moriarty, Andrew Scott, suggested the criminal mastermind would play a pivotal role in the following season. Unfortunately, fans would discover that he had no involvement in Season 4, which is less of a retcon and more of an infuriating cop-out. Early seasons of The Walking Dead established that getting blood from one of the undead in your eyes or mouth or in a wound would prove fatal, yet later seasons ignore this rule almost completely. This retcon goes further than just the TV series, as it is an acknowledged and important detail in the Robert Kirkman-penned comic book series that inspired the AMC hit. By the end of Married, with Children's first season, half of which saw Peg, Katie Sagal, pregnant, it is revealed to have been all Al's, Ed O'Neill, dream, but there is actually a dark truth to this retcon. As the actor explains in her memoir, Grace notes, Sagal's real-life pregnancy at this time was written into the show, but when she suffered a miscarriage, it was decided that the show would not bring another child into the cast. In the second ever episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, Tea at the Tree Dome, we see the title character, voiced by Tom Kenny, meet Sandy Cheeks, Carolyn Lawrence, for the very first time. However, the prequel spin-off, Camp Coral, SpongeBob's Under Years, suggests that the sea sponge and the squirrel knew each other when they stayed at the eponymous camp as children.